Hello, Ian Gray here for episode 76 of the Confident Live Marketing Show. Today we're going to be talking about top mindset tips for successful live streams, and I'm joined here by Patrice McCauley. How are you doing, Patrice?
I'm great.
Hey, it's great to have you here. I'm so excited to bring you on the show because we had a little chat, didn't we? It was more than a little chat quite a few months ago, didn't we?
Yeah. And first of all, thanks for having me. I loved our chat a few months ago, and then we've been kind of building up to this, I guess.
Yes.
And we have great interest in this topic of confidence. So it's it's going to be a great fun conversation.
Yeah, definitely. And so would you describe yourself as a mindset coach? Is that or is there a more full title?
So what I would call myself is a transformational coach. So I deal with people on the level of mindset, emotions, and also, spiritual life, their calling, their purpose, but it comes together as a package, and mindset is very much an important part of that. So, I like to work with people finding the source code. A lot of the things like lack of confidence can be a symptom of what's really going on a deeper level in terms of our identity and our belief systems. So I love to think of my work as finding the source code and then, deleting old programs that we don't need anymore, that are not running well for us, and then putting in new programs.
I love that. Well, don't give too much away because we haven't gone to the podcast bit, and I don't want you to be sharing all of these amazing things. I love that idea of getting to the source code. I mean, maybe this is because I'm a geek and I don't know, I think in computer terms, but that's really helpful. And it's kind of interesting that it has taken at least a couple of months, probably more like 3 or 4 months actually, since we first spoke. And I did a session with you, which was so helpful. And the fact that it's been quite a few months has got nothing at all to do with procrastination, I don't think. So we're going to be talking about procrastination. Also, the fact that sometimes we can overcomplicate things and try and be perfect and things like that. So I can see we've got some lovely people watching. I can see Shirley is watching from Australia. I'll highlight you in a minute, Shirley. Thank you so much for your comment. If you're watching somewhere else in the world, let us know. Don't be shy. It's great. These shows are even more exciting when we have lots of people getting involved with the comments. So you can pop your comments as well. And if you're watching the replay, thank you so much. It's great to have you here. Just put #replay in the comments. And I also want to just let you know that if you would like to know more about these in the future, if you want to be notified, then you can get in touch with my fancy Facebook Messenger bot. And you've encountered my Facebook Messenger bot, haven't you, Patrice?
I have. I loved it.
Yeah. So if you go to confident. And that's the wrong one. Let me get the right one. confident.live/subscribe. It even rhymes. confident.live/subscribe. You can actually download my confidence guide. But today, Patrice is going to be sharing her confidence guide, which is fabulous. And I'm really looking forward to reading that. So, but yeah, confident.live/subscribe. And you can get notified for forthcoming shows, which will be awesome. Right. I think it's time to get on with the show. What do you think, Patrice?
Dun, dun, dun.
Yes. I don't think I've got I don't think you can hear this. Can anyone else hear this if I play this? Patrice can't hear that. But anyway, if you can hear that, if you can't, well, I'll have to fix the tech. But anyway, we'll be with you just after this.
This is the Confident Live Marketing Podcast. Confident Live Marketing Podcast with Ian Gray, helping entrepreneurs level up their impact, authority and profits through the power of live video. Gain confidence in front of the camera, confidence with technology, and confidence with the content and marketing.
Together, we can go live!
Hello, Ian Gray for episode 76 of the Confident Live Marketing Show. thank you so much for either watching live, watching the replay, or listening to the podcast. If you're listening to the podcast, this is a live show that we do twice per week, and it turns into a podcast. And of course, if you're watching live or watching the replay, check out the podcast, iag.me/podcast. The show notes for this episode will be at iag.me/76. And in today's show, I'm joined by Patrice McCauley to talk about top mindset tips for successful live streams. We've got some fabulous people watching live. We have Shirley watching from sunny coast Australia, so great to see you. Got Sasha watching from somewhere in the UK. I keep forgetting where you're from, Sasha. Sasha is the brains behind the Facebook Messenger bot. Martin Buckland is watching on LinkedIn from guess where? I believe that's Toronto. Jake says, "Oh, this is good. Hopefully, you are hearing that sound for dramatic effect. Great to see you, Jake. Hope you're doing well." And Andrena McCauley is loud and clear from Donegal Islands. I wonder if that's a relation. Yep. I can hear Patrice in the background. Yes, so that's great. Fabulous, wonderful. Well, I think it's time to bring in my first sponsor. And today, and I'm hoping the tech's going to work. Is it going to work? Ooh, it is! The tech's going to work. This is Restream. And Restream is one of the technologies that I use every week for this show. It is the complete multi-streaming suite for entrepreneurs. So you can go live to Facebook, you can go live to YouTube, you can go live to Twitch, any of these platforms. But what about broadcasting to more than one at the same time? And in this show, probably a bit over the top, but I'm broadcasting to Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn Live, Periscope, Twitch, and a lot more, which I won't go into. And this is one of the things that you can do with Restream. You can actually broadcast to multiple platforms at the same time. In fact, they have over 30 different destinations at the same time, including LinkedIn Live, Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Periscope, and so much more. So you could do what I'm doing today. You can broadcast from another tool like Ecamm Live, or you can do OBS Studio if you want to be a bit more complicated. And this allows you to boost your views and reach audiences that you wouldn't normally do. Or you can use, they have the Restream Studio. So this allows you to stream professionally from your browser, which I'm also using today. So if you see the comments on the screen, if you're watching live or the replay, those come from Restream Studio. So you can see comments and you can highlight things on the screen. You can add graphics and things like that. And you can have up to 9 guests on your show. So that is pretty cool. Now, that's all very well and good to multi-stream to all these different places, but if you can't engage with your audience, if you can't see your audience, which are your friends, they're your fans, they're the people that you want to interact with, then there's kind of no point in my opinion, because the power of live video is that interaction. But with Restream, you can interact, you can highlight comments on the screen from all those different channels, which is pretty awesome. They've got some other features. You've got the scheduler where you can stream your pre-recorded videos live. And of course, they've got the analytics part of Restream. And this allows you to see how your streams are doing, see how many people are watching live and throughout the live stream. So if you want to find out more, all you need to do is go to iag.me/Restream. They've got a free plan and some paid plans, so you can play around with it. And I thank you, Restream, for sponsoring the show. It's an amazing tool, so I definitely recommend checking that out. Okay, fabulous, if I can say that word. It is time to bring in Patrice. Patrice McCauley is a certified transformational life coach who works with entrepreneurs and ambitious professionals who are successful but have lost their spark. She helps them to create truly meaningful success so that they can show up daily with joy and purpose. Her core message is the key to happiness is to connect to your authentic self. Patrice, welcome to the Confident Live Marketing Show. How are you doing?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's fabulous to have you on. I've been so excited about having you on. We spoke quite a few months ago, and you helped me with a session, and I was so excited at the end of it. It was really, really helpful. And yeah, now it's quite a few months later, which, as I was joking before, has got nothing to do with procrastination. But
yeah, which we talked about. No, I believe you. I believe you. Life's been very busy for you.
Well, it's great to have you on the show. I can see a few other people watching. Just to say, so you mentioned Andrena is watching. Is that a relation of yours?
Yes, Andrina is my mom.
Oh, hi. Hi, Patrice's mum.
It's always good to have parents who are number one fans. So Andrina and Pat are watching in Donegal.
Absolutely. I think, I had a friend of mine, Janet Murray, on the show quite a few months ago. One of the things that she was saying, don't be shy about getting your friends and family to watch your lives. It's actually quite a good thing to particularly when you're starting, but even if you've been doing it for years, get them on and get a bit of that conversation going. It's kind of like the empty restaurant, get people in to make it look a bit more full, and it makes you a bit more confident as well.
Yeah, for sure. And also, they do get stuff out of it. Which is quite amazing. I started off with friends and family on my lives, and they're still there because they're getting value. And I didn't expect that. They were the support career in the beginning, but it is a good thing to do.
Well, and I think the topic today about confidence. Yes, we're going to be talking specifically about live streaming, but I think there's a lot of things that will come from this that will just help generally in life, which is great. Who else have we got? Oh, yeah, so Sasha says she's in Oxford. I knew that. And we do have somebody watching on Twitch, so this is exciting. We've got Nate OCE watching on Twitch. Great to see you. Hope you're doing well. Let me know what you're doing in the world of live streaming. In fact, just let us know what your biggest barriers are to live streaming. Is it the tech? Is it the confidence and mindset, or is it the content and marketing? Those are the three big things that we talk about on this show. But today, this show is all about mindset. So, Patrice, let us know how you got into this. You say that you're this certified transformational life coach, but I'm sure that wasn't always the case. Give us a brief kind of background on how you got into this mad world of transformational life coaching.
This mad and fun world. Yeah. It definitely wasn't always the case. I was actually in corporate, corporates and startups. So I was in a lot of entrepreneurial projects throughout my career. I tend to move from, places like Google and Microsoft to then kind of smaller startups. And I was in corporate marketing. So I was doing, lots of stuff with big budgets and traveling the world. At Google, I was in charge of Australia and New Zealand, the reseller channel. So it was a big career and lots of growth, and I kept stepping up, and I always find something new and interesting, and I would change and transform, every kind of 3 years, because that's what I love. And it's no surprise now that I'm a transformational coach and I talk and help people through transitions. So when the story was that when I got to, the pinnacle, or what I thought was my dream job at Google, and after about 6 months or so, my stress was increasing, my anxiety was increasing, the responsibility and the travel and the lifestyle. And I thought, is this really it? This is supposed to be the pinnacle of everything that I've been working towards and dreaming about. And so I really had to just take a step back, because it just wasn't working. I knew in my body and my mind, I wasn't happy, even though I looked like it on the outside. And we might touch on that a little bit in this session. I had to then just start deeply questioning, who am I? What do I want? And it sent me on a whole personal development journey. I worked with shamans around the world. I did lots of really fun things. I traveled, I trained as a therapist. So now basically as a transformational coach, I bring all of that. I bring all of my experience in terms of energy, in terms of, therapy, and also my experience, being in business for 16 years. So that's why I work with ambitious professionals, because I do understand that journey where you get to hit a wall and you realize that you can't go any further. You need to start making some changes in your life. Yeah. So, yeah.
That's fascinating. So you kind of you've already had your midlife crisis, so you can.
I remember at the time people say, "Well, you've got that out of the way quite early."
That's true, and it is interesting, because I think like when I wonder, if you're watching live or the replay, let me know what your experience has been with this. But I found, like, when I was younger, maybe at university or like at school or whatever, I had more time to think. And that is a time when I was probably like thinking about, well, who am I? I was looking at those big questions, but then life gets in the way, work and all this kind of stuff. And you end up on this kind of, I don't know, this treadmill, really. People talk about that a lot. And it sounded like that's what you were on. You were on this treadmill, and you didn't really get that time to really properly ask those big questions. until you got to your pinnacle, the pinnacle, your dream job, and then you thought, oh, is that it? And I'd just be interested if anyone else out there has kind of thought about that and has had that time to do some deep thinking, and we're going to do some deep thinking today. So I want to ask you a question, Patrice, which is, and this seems odd because this show is called the Confident Live Marketing Show. So this might seem a bit of a weird question, but what actually is confidence? And there's a flip question to this, which is what isn't confidence? So can you maybe just define, just before we get started with this, what confidence is and isn't?
Yeah, I'm going to start with the flip side, which is often how we as people come to things, which is what's wrong, what it's not. So, confidence is not loud or brash or arrogant, or kind of up there and up and out and in your face. Confidence actually is something, and it's not something that you're born with either. Now, this is the big myth, and it's a myth that stops a lot of us from stepping up and out and doing things. We look at others and we think, oh my God, she must be born like that, or he must be born like that. And it's really not true. So those are two things that it's not. What it is confidence is earned. Confidence is a byproduct of each and every time you practice skills and they become part of you, and then confidence builds as you see that evidence and you see that you're getting better over time. So it's not something that can be learned. It's something that has to be experienced through action. So yeah, let that settle in.
Yeah, well, we did say we were going to do some deep thinking. Thankfully, Shirley from Australia is saying love deep thinking, so that's good. We're going to get deep on here, and I can see that Johnny Ross is here saying hi, Ian. It's great to have you here. Let us know what you think about that. How would you define confidence, or what isn't confidence? And I think that's interesting. We're going to touch on comparison, or I like to call it kind of comparison syndrome, that I think a lot of us struggle with, entrepreneurs and just regular people. And I've talked a lot about that on the show recently. So that's great. We're not born with it. It's something that we don't learn, but it's something that we have to experience, or maybe we experience it and then we can learn from that experience.
Kind of what I mean is you're not learning it. It's not something that you can get a book on and learn it intellectually. Okay. It's something that has to be done as you apply it, and it has to be done through taking action. So, this idea that if I can't do it straight off and I'm not great at it, I'm just not going to try. We have a lot of that now in schools where they're teaching growth mindset as opposed to fixed mindset. Fixed mindset is I've got to do it the first time and be, the world champion at it. Whereas growth mindset allows for you to learn over time and to accept where you're at, and then to improve and hone your skills.
I love that. That's really, really interesting, really helpful. So it's a different way of thinking. It isn't staying still, but I think what my message would be, and I'm sure this would be your message to my listeners and viewers, is first of all, you're not alone if you are struggling with some of these issues, and second of all, there is hope. There is hope. I mean, I'm still struggling with a lot of these things. I posted an email out this morning to my list, and I kind of said this is quite ironic that I haven't sent an email out in the last 2 or 3 weeks. But we're talking, I still struggle with these things, but I've come on a long way. So Martin Buckland says, this is enlightening. That's what we like to hear. So, okay. So let's bring it specifically to live video. And I always like to ask my guests this question of why go live in the first place? Because I think for some people it's really scary. Sometimes they'll get overly excited by the technology and think, oh, let's sort all of that out, and then I'll go in front of the camera, and then they realize they were just procrastinating, and actually this really scary thing is getting in front of the camera. Martin Buckland, Martin, if you could just maybe quickly share your story in the comments, because I met Martin last year and he was really struggling with getting in front of the camera. It was a mindset thing, and then suddenly, I basically just went live with him at a conference, and it all clicked, and it was absolutely, and it was been no stopping him. But why first of all, why go live, and why is it scary for some but not for others? Any thoughts on that?
Are you asking your audience first, or
I'm going to ask you, Patrice. But yeah, I'll be interested in what everyone else thinks. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, my theory on this, like, why is it harder for some than others? You know, my theory is that it is difficult across the board, and maybe marginally more for others than some. But I think that once you click a button to go live, and you feel very vulnerable. So any fears, any deep fears or resistance coming up, it all piles up and loads up in that moment, and it's fear. You know, you're afraid. We're always afraid to show our most vulnerable selves. We're always afraid to be up there and to be judged. So, you know, resistance and what we've spoken about before is that resistance can show up in lots of different ways. So in, you know, compare and despair is what I like to call it. You know, looking at others and fear of being judged. So again, it boils down to a fear. Imposter syndrome is one that you've spoken about and we've chatted about, where it's practiced self-doubt. It's just been practiced and practiced for so long that you really and you have a belief under there that you're a fraud. Oh, I'm a fraud. I'm going to be found out. But again, it's that fear of being found out. You know, so really what I have come to understand, and it has many permutations, but it's whatever our fears are, they come to the surface, particularly with going live. It's a really great one to use as a personal growth journey.
Yes, it definitely is. And that's been my experience. I mean, in many ways, I'm a reluctant live video guy. I didn't seek to go into this to get in front of the camera. I was interested in the technology, and I wrote an article that went viral, and I was flung into this space, and I realized I'm going to have to do this, aren't I, and get in front of the camera. And actually, I've really enjoyed it, but it still requires courage and resistance. So you mentioned resistance. Again, we've talked about this on the show before. I love the way you define that. So I think you mentioned perfectionism is one way that can manifest itself. Imposter syndrome, compare and despair, did you say?
Yeah, compare and despair. That's a big one today, because what we're seeing, you know, and I did a live on this myself recently, and I love this because it's just been magnified with social media. And what we're actually doing when we're comparing, you know, think of it, when you're comparing a bunch of different things or people, what you're doing is lining them up in order to see which one doesn't measure up. So first of all, you're in a loser game. You're in a lose-lose game. And secondly, when you're comparing your whole self. So your insides, your doubts, your fears, you know, all of that. But what you're comparing with is someone else's projected outsides. So they're honed, and they're projecting a certain aspect of themselves. So it's an unfair game. And a lot of us do this so much so that we actually erode our own self-confidence, and it stops us. It gets in our way. You know, so whereas I talk about when comparing despair, if we lose the despair part, comparison we can use as an upward spiral. We can use comparison to say, you know, oh, that person's great. I'd love to practice that and get better at that. But just don't go into the second part of it, which is the downward spiral of judging yourself in comparison with someone else. You know, use it as a positive and uplifting way to get better and to hone your skills.
It makes total sense to do that. I mean, if you think about it logically, you know, there are other live video people out there, and I could look at them and think, oh well, I could never be as good as those people, and oh, I'm just not good enough, and you know, I could, you know, and I have gone through times when that's been the case, but that's just setting myself up to fail, and it's ending up into that spiral of despair. Whereas why not look at what they do, celebrate that, and learn from what they're doing, thinking that's a really good idea. I should do something not exactly the same, but something like inspired from that. You know what? So, but why do we do this to ourselves? Why, you know, what is it, you know, why do we set ourselves up to fail? Is it like I've heard people talk about, you know, there's two parts to our brain, you know, like the caveman brain and the other kind of brain, and it's almost like we're setting up. It's almost as if there's like a tiger that's coming out to jump on us and kill us, and so our prehistoric brain is trying to protect us. I mean, is it that kind of thing, or is it? And what's your view on that?
I love that you touched on this because well, we say that there are three brains. So you have so you have your what you call the prehistoric brain, so the critter brain. That's the ancient part of you, as you were very rightly saying, to protect us from what is going to come and attack us or eat us up. That lion that's going to come in and get us. We have our prefrontal cortex, which is our very conscious brain that is all about growth and moving forward and helping us, to come here. What we're meant to do when we come here is to grow, right? So it's all about that. And then we have our midbrain, which is trying to keep the peace in between the two. So if you think about it, that prehistoric brain, it just hasn't evolved. So it's concerned with what is there happening outside of me that could be dangerous. And so it's always going to want to protect you. It's always looking for what's wrong. So we have a negative bias, and it's a known mindset. We have a negative bias that is there telling us, what could go wrong, what can go wrong. So the critter brain, if you learn that and you see it coming and you tune into what the critter brain is saying, you can get comfy with it and say, oh, well, that's just my critter brain. So now let's step aside. Let's get conscious about this. We want to move forward. All parts of me are wanting to do this. Let's come together. And you can sidestep that fear that will always come up, that resistance and fear. And it's just there for a positive intention. That's the other way that you can get friendly with this. Is we don't need to fight it. We need to just see it and say, thanks for trying to keep me safe. Thanks. I know you're doing your job. Now let me take us on a journey. It sounds strange, but it's almost getting into an inner dialogue with yourself and recognizing these different voices.
It's interesting. It's almost like this, the way we treat ourselves is almost like a form of self-harm, and it almost becomes this kind of like friend that kind of is with you. I don't know whether you're a Monty Python fan, but it's like I was reminded of the comfy chair as being an instrument of torture. And I think actually in a way it's allowing us to get into a comfy chair, not by doing anything. We'll just sit in our comfy chair, but actually that's the worst possible thing for us to sit in. Do you think, by the way, we're going to get on with the tips, and we're focusing maybe on the negative at the moment, but there is definitely light at the end of the tunnel, which we're going to talk about. I just want to kind of focus on the negative so that people, we understand what we're dealing with here. Do you think that, this is a similar question to what I asked before, do you think some people have more resistance to others? I sometimes feel that my resistance is so strong, and I wonder whether, like, I see other people out there that don't seem to, again, I'm comparing, who don't seem to have the same level of that resistance. Do you think some people struggle with it more than others?
It's hard to say. I tend to say that we don't know what anyone's journey is. We don't know what's going on in the totality of anyone else. So, I think it's a belief, and it's maybe something that we might explore. That might be a belief in you that, other people have it easier, or, I'm not as good. It comes down, we all have these kind of core beliefs running, and we're looking for evidence of that until we change that belief. So I would tend to say there's no way to know whether some find it easier than others, and maybe, but again, that's putting the focus in the place where maybe we can reframe that and say, hey, the only person that I really know inside and out, all of my deepest feelings and whatever my resistance is me. And what if, let's reframe it, what if that resistance is for a purpose? What if that resistance is teaching me in the best way possible to get better and better and better? And if I didn't have to go through all those steps of resistance, then I wouldn't be able to teach it, which here's your purpose. You're here and you're teaching all of this because you've done it, and you're doing it brick by brick by brick. Now that's the best place for you to be, to inspire others to learn and grow in this journey. So I would always bring it back to you,
Yeah, I think that's important. And again, that's going down the comparison thing. I think it can be helpful, or this is my view, in that sometimes I think it can be a good thing to know that you're not alone, that other people struggle with this as well, that you're not a freak. And I think we've talked about that a lot on the show. If you struggle with some of these things, you are absolutely not alone. And You know, there are these whole limiting beliefs that I think so many of us struggle with, which we're going to talk about just after my next sponsor. I just want to highlight a few comments before we do that. So I can see Tim Sawn is here. Great to see you, Tim. Hope you're doing well. He says, good morning from across the pond. How are things going for you? He says, what's shaking him? I'm very excited today that we're talking about this. Is one of my favorite subjects. So I hope you're enjoying this, Tim. So Martin, I've mentioned Martin before. You can't see this all on the screen, but he says, yes, I'm a speaker, can stand up confidently in front of a live in-person large event. No problem. Just look for the exit just in case. However, my fear was getting in front of the camera lens, and that was conquered at the conference in London where I met you, Ian. Since then, I go live often, have successful weekly Tuesday at 2, Facebook Live with a large following, and currently waiting for LinkedIn Live, which is my prime audience. Conquer the fear. There is a new world and new opportunities. And I just think your story, Martin, is so inspirational. It just took that one mindset change, and then there's just no stopping you. Tim Sawn says, love this. Learn from others in our industries that we look up to instead of being intimidated by them. And he also says, shout out to growing and shout out to a light at the end of the tunnel. So before we get on to all the positive stuff, and I know that you've got so much to share with us, I want to bring in my next sponsor, which is Content 10X. Content 10X are the complete end-to-end content repurposing service. So you can go live, and then you can then take that into a plethora of different pieces of content. Amy was on the show, who is the founder of Content 10X. I can't remember when it was. Was it last week? I think it was. And she was talking about, you can actually kind of create video babies. You can have your live video can then have lots of mini little videos that come from it. And you could turn it into a podcast like I do, or into a blog post. And so repurposing allows you to create so much other content from your one piece of content, a live video in this case. And that's one of the main reasons, or the big reasons, why I love live video. So they're specialist content repurposing agency. They'll take one live stream or one blog post or video and explode it into all those different types of content. They can do it for you. So if you hire them, they can do it all for you through their service, or they can teach you how to do it yourself through. They've got a blog, they've got a podcast, they've got a book. And they've now got a new service that Amy talked about recently called LinkedIn 10X. So if you're wanting to harness the power of LinkedIn, but you're finding it difficult with the time, you're wanting to just become have more brand awareness and become a thought leader on LinkedIn, then why not check out their LinkedIn 10X service, which is awesome. All you need to do is create one weekly video that can be either live or pre-recorded video, and then they will take that and turn it into lots of other content on your LinkedIn profile. It's really, really awesome. And if you're interested to find out more about that, just check out Amy's episode a couple of weeks ago. So thank you, Amy and the team, for sponsoring this show. All you need to do is check out Content 10X at content10x.com. And I thank you so much for sponsoring this podcast. Okay, Patrice, it's time to talk about, is the button going to, come on button, there we go, it's working now. So, we've talked about the doom and gloom, which I think we need to get out of the way. But what can we do now? We've talked about these limiting beliefs. We could talk about rewiring the brain, but I mean, what are your tips and practices, first of all, when it comes to live streaming and being successful or being confident?
Yeah, this is great. And I'm going to touch on, again, this idea that if you use this journey, like everything that we do that's new and we're learning something, it's growth, right? So if you look at it in terms of curiosity and openness, and we look at it as a personal growth journey, then we can actually learn a lot for other parts of our lives. Because, I like to say the way we do one thing is how we do everything. So how you're approaching and showing up to do lives will actually give you clues as to what fears are operating or what's going on for you, when you're doing anything new. So really look at it as this beautiful journey, enjoy it, and, accept where you're at, start where you're at and get better and better over time. So that's the perspective that I like to put on it. And then, the first tip then is to learn by doing. You're not going to learn this intellectually, as we said. You're going to learn as you get into action. And, myself, even when I started started doing my lives. I started doing lives maybe 10 months ago. And I've had a live series now for 9 months, and it's been amazing. Just, the steps that I went through personally, as I practiced each time, I saw myself go from being over prepared and maybe quite layered. My authentic self was kind of layered in behind, but I went from being, over prepared and scripted to just getting comfortable with, yes, the technology helps, but really just by being me and sharing myself. So that's the other thing, the practicing helps you just settle into being your authentic self. I said my main message is the key to happiness is being your authentic self. It really is about that, because everyone is sick of the fake, perfect persona these days. I love the fact that you talk about your journey, and I'm getting better at that too. But what I found was that I had practiced in my life, this wearing these masks and trying to show up as being perfect. But again, that was fear. That was a fear of just being open and vulnerable. So with this practice, it allows you to get better over time, get better at each micro skill, breaking it down into each little micro skill. And as, after a while, you just notice that actually it's become a part of you. You don't even need to think about it anymore. Like driving, you suddenly, when you're beginning, like you're very conscious of the gears and conscious of steering and conscious of the road and all that. But after a while, everyone's had the experience. You go from point A to point B and you're like, how did I get here? Because you're off in your mind somewhere else. That's because it's become a habit, So that's kind of two tips in one, practice, create these micro skills that become a habit, but the practice allows you to settle into just being yourself. And, it's easy to be yourself. It doesn't require any energy or preparation. Once you get to that comfort level, that's what people want.
It's so true. And I think I found that myself, that to begin with, I was so worried about the technology, trying to, oh my goodness, like I need to think about that. Is my microphone on? And yeah, I mean, I don't know what happened to me in all of that. I mean, it was kind of almost drowned. And so I think it just doing it and doing it and doing it. The first probably dozen that you do will be, they might not be complete failures, but they're not going to be. I mean, if I look back at my first few videos, my live videos, it's going to be maybe a bit, not depressing, because maybe I'll see actually I've come on tremendously. So I think it is a good idea to look back at your first ones. But yeah, if you're just starting off, don't try and make your first ones perfect. And I think you've mentioned this before, but practice in a private group, or practice and Facebook, you can actually change the privacy settings to only me and just practice it on your own and try it in a safe space first. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I was going to mention that too. So I'm going to shout out to Nikki, one of my fellow coaches. She started this group for all of us coaches to practice, which was just beautiful, because my first live, I remember literally pressing the button and I couldn't even speak. My first live was, hello, oh my God, I'm live. And I was trying to figure out what I was doing. And I just talked about how nervous I was. And then what I found was, as soon as I just claimed that and said it, my nerves, everything started to settle down. And that was my first one out of the way. And from there, I got better. So like my first live was in a very safe space. And I think you would do really well to give yourself what you need. Don't throw yourself into the deep end. Don't, put yourself under pressure. Just start small. And, the first one, once you get the first one out of the way, it's great.
Definitely. I think actually, the other thing that I've tried to do, I haven't done this as much as I should have done, but is to keep a diary. And so after I've done the first one, well, what went well? So focus on the positives, and then focus on, well, what can I do to improve things? And I've tried to do this more recently, is like, just be aware of my internal voice. So like sometimes I just found that before, that like sometimes this like negative voice will pop up in my head, and I think, well, where did that come from? And it's just being aware of that. Do you think that's a good idea to create a diary?
Yeah, We've got so many things in common. So I call that a self-audit. It's something that I do after coaching sessions, and it's also something I do after my lives. I actually watch it again and I make any pointers, but I've trained myself to watch with kindness. So I'm not watching to judge myself. I'm watching to pick up things that I can do better. And I'll have a couple of points each time. And that's, a leading into the inner voice thing. So that's another one of my tips, which is just tune into your inner self-talk and understand, what is it saying? If it's like, I'm not enough, you'll never be good enough, write those things down, get comfortable with what your negative, your inner critic is saying, just so you can see, that's probably coming from my critter brain. And again, there's a positive intention. It's trying to keep me safe. So the more we get kinder, more compassionate and friendlier with these fearful parts of us that come up, they just want to be seen. Then it helps us to just calm the whole thing down. And as you said, over time, you've been doing this very naturally over time, and myself included, with lives, you're getting better, doing a little self-audit, tuning into your negative self-talk, and then you can start to turn it around. You can start to say, well, what's the opposite of that? I'll never be enough. Well, try on, I am enough. I'm good enough. I've got a message to share. I'm here. People want to hear what I have to say. I have value. So it's a stepped process, but awareness is definitely the huge step here. The more you can understand who you are, what's going on inside of you, the more that you can start to declutter and program and rewire, these negative voices and negative beliefs.
So micro steps, and we watched rewatched The Matrix the other week, which my daughter had never seen before, and it's not like that, unfortunately. When you can basically download a new program to your brain and suddenly you can fly a helicopter. You can't just download the confidence program and suddenly you're confident and doing everything. It takes those little micro steps over time, and yeah, so that is the
I think we're moving there, though. I'd like to think we're moving there.
Well, yeah.
Energetically, that we can download, we can download new beliefs, and then we have to walk those beliefs into reality. I do believe that kind of stuff is possible. I love The Matrix.
Yeah, it is. So I think the rewiring or the changing of our beliefs is possible, but it maybe isn't quite as quick as just downloading the program in one go yet.
No, but if you think about it, when you change a program and you start to then use a new program, you're going to be wobbling for a while. You're like, how does this work and how does that work together? And it takes practice. So that's the walking it into your life, and it's always going to take practice, and you're always going to get better over time. Definitely. Anything new requires practice.
Yeah, it definitely does. So what's your next tip? We've talked about practicing. We've talked about being kind to yourself, or the whole kind of negative self-talk thing. What else is there?
Another big one for me, and it's tuning into your why. So a lot of this can be about, this stress or this focus on ourselves, and our ego can get really engaged, and then all these voices start going, like negative voices and critical voices. But what happens when you shift the focus onto why? Why am I doing this? Why am I showing up here? Who are my audience? What do they want? The minute you start to do that, you start to make it about them and not about you. And so it becomes, well, who am I not to step up and to share the value that I have? You see and collect evidence over time. I certainly have, that people are waiting for you because you're really helping them with whatever your expertise is. You're showing up and you're really helping them. So when you get into that service mentality, it takes the focus off you, and it starts to melt everything else away, and it really becomes about, I'm showing up here for my people, and I've really got something of value for them to help them transform their lives in some way. So that's huge, and I find that really, really works for me. It's like when I find myself so myopic and focused on myself, I'm like, okay, who am I showing up for? And I know who I am showing up for, and it just shifts.
That's so important, because I think it is easy to become self-obsessed. You're so worried about the technology working. Is my hair okay? I'm like, oh, I've forgotten the words. People are going to hate me. And I think actually flipping it around, focusing on why are you actually doing this? And, I need to remind myself, and I try and do this on a regular basis. I'm doing this because I want to help people. And so I always recommend that people create a document. It doesn't need to be like a big document, but just like a one page that lists all the reasons why you're doing this show. What is the reason for this, of you doing it? Who is your audience, and why are you wanting to help them? And then just read that before you go live each time. And I think having that in your mind is going to really, really help, because when you start to kind of self-obsess, you can, you remind yourself why you're doing it. It's not about you. It's not about, it's ultimately to help people. That's great. So that's the why. How about your next tip?
So there's one more, I think, that is, we didn't talk about one word, and that's trust. So confidence, at the very basic term, very basic explanation, it's a trust in yourself and a trust in your abilities. And so, many of us, I would say, I'm not going to say everyone, but many of us have a distortion with trust, because at some point or another, we have broken our trust with ourselves or with other people. So, earning trust, again, is a thing that needs to be earned, and earning that trust back does wonders for self-confidence. So my tip on earning your trust is to make a habit of closing what I call the say-do gap. So what you say you're going to do. And when that lines up and you close that gap, you start to trust yourself. And so when you practice it again, you say, 3:00 tomorrow, I'm working on content for my live broadcast. And you show up tomorrow at 3:00 and you do it. And bit by bit, any confidence that has been eroded starts to come back. And when you have that gap closed, that is where you start to benefit from this deep inner knowing. And that's, again, what confidence is. It's not loud, it's not brash, it's not arrogant. It's this deep inner knowing that I can do this. Whatever shows up, I have it within me, and I have the ability. And it's a quiet inner knowing, because you have shown up and you have built that trust with yourself. And that trust also, by the way, then extends to everybody you work with. They're like, oh, they do what they say. I trust that person. So that's very much a big foundational piece. And it's something, again, that if you feel like you don't trust yourself, which many of us don't, you can change it. You can earn it back, but it takes that discipline. Again, practice, practice, practice.
Yeah, definitely. And maybe having some people around you that are going to hold you accountable. I think what I've found really, really helpful with the world of live video is scheduling your live shows. So like, I scheduled today's show last week, and I know what's happening on Thursday. We've got Chris Tucker on the show, and then the following. So I said to myself, I am going to produce a podcast every single week I'm just going to keep doing it. And I doubted myself, but I was really committed to do it. And with my live show, I am, and I've done it. And I think, like a couple of years ago, I would never have thought I would be able to do that, because I just couldn't trust myself. Now I feel, I haven't seen it this way until you just now, what you said, but I feel now I can trust myself when it comes to this part of my business and my personality, which is really encouraging. And that allows me to be more confident in how I'm progressing moving forward. So that's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, and I love that, Ian, because that translates into other parts of your life. When you trust that you can show up and do something regularly, then it translates into many other parts. And it's the same for me when I was challenged by a mentor to do a 10-week series, but actually it ended up being, so far it's 9 months, and I've got no plans to stop. And I would have thought, but what happens when there's weeks where I just don't want to show up, or I don't feel like it? Well, I've shown up and just said, hey, I'm not 100% today. So it's just that commitment and that decision really, really wins your trust.
That's great. Great stuff. Were there any other tips you wanted to share with us before we finish?
Well, I actually have a guide, which is 9 tips to own your confidence. So if you want to sign up for that, I think you're going to share the link.
Yes, it's iag.me. Sorry to interrupt you, but it's iag.me/Patrice. Is how you can get this, iag.me/Patrice.
Yeah. So the last thing I want to leave you with in terms of this is, information, when it's not applied, it's clutter. And, I'm not here to clutter your mind up with more information. What I'm really interested in is that you take some of these tips, and, in my guide, I have lots of practices. It's very much about putting things into action. Take them, pick one thing that you're going to change, and do it, stick to it, and make it happen, because transformation is something that happens with action. Confidence builds with action, and give yourself that chance, because if you want to be that person who believes in themselves and shows up with confidence and see how it changes your entire life, then you need to dedicate yourself. And right now you just need to make a decision. I'm going to do it. I'm going to dedicate myself to doing that. So
true. So true. I love that. And the other thing that you mentioned in the email that you sent to me was about finding the joy in what you do as well. I think that's important. We can get so cluttered up with, I need to do this, I need to do this, but bit of fun in it, bit of joy. I think that's a good thing.
Oh, look, this is my raison d'être, like joie de vivre. I'm married to a Frenchman. So joy is my purpose, my reason. And what I'm actually doing now is, first of all, helping clients tap into what is your reason? What is your joy, your fun? Usually we're mission led. We're showing up to do these things for a reason. And when we follow our joy and make it playful and make it fun, that's who we are at our essence. Then it just leads on. You don't have to make yourself do things that you don't want to do. You need to let your joy lead the way. So finding the fun, tapping into who you are, and just really being aligned with your purpose, your mission, it becomes fun. And after that, you don't need to think about it, because each thing leads on to the next, and you're drawn by this, rising feeling of joy. So I'm all about that.
I think, can we have a bit of an amen or an amen, depending on how you pronounce that, in the comments for that? Because I think that's awesome stuff. Well, thank you so much, Patrice. This has just been such a fun interview, and such a deep and interesting conversation, really, that I think we all need to be focused on. Even if you feel confident, there's still work to do. I think it's a journey that we're all on. It's those micro steps. So this will be, all the show notes for this will be available at iag.me/76. Give that a couple of weeks if you're watching the live show, and that'll be ready there. And of course, there is Patrice's guide, which is at iag.me/Patrice. So definitely check that out. Thank you so much for producing that. And of course, if you want to subscribe to this show and find out when the next one is and be notified for that, all you need to do is go to confident.live/subscribe next week, this Thursday. If you're watching live, I've got Chris Ducker on the show. And this is quite helpful. We've talked about confidence today. On Thursday, we're going to be talking about the confidence of selling on your live shows. And this is the whole idea of selling on a live show can fill a lot of us with dread and fear. So that's going to be great to talk to Chris about that. How can people find out a little bit more about you, Patrice? I mean, obviously they can download your guide. I assume you're on the socials and on the web. What's the best place to find you?
On the interwebs. Yes. So a couple of places. So consciouslivingLabs.com is my website. And if anyone is interested in having a further conversation, the first session that I do with people is a discovery session. So you can jump on there and book if you want to have a further chat about this. Also, I have a group called Gloriously Me, Happy and Free. It rhymes. So in there, I do give a lot of stuff. I'm there live weekly, and there's a lot of participation, and I give away a lot more of what I talk about today. So those are the two key places. But yeah, download the guide, and that will get you into action, which is really what I care about. This is my thing. Take action.
Yeah, totally with you on that one. So don't stay still. Take action today. Write down the things that you have learned today and that you want to do. Don't trust in the old way of thinking, which is beating yourself up and thinking that you can't do these things. There is light at the end of the tunnel, as Tim Sawn said. There so is. And I'm really excited to see what you can do. So don't work on this on your own. Put in the comments. Let us know what you're going to do and what you're going to achieve. And I can't wait. Thank you so much, Patrice. It's been great to have you on the show. But until next time, I encourage you to level up your impact, authority, and profits through the power of Confident Live Video. See you soon. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Confident Live Marketing Podcast with Ian Anderson Gray. Be sure to join the community at iag.me, where you can continue to level up your impact, authority, and profits through the power of live video. And until next time, toodaloo.